We did the training programs in investigative journalism in 4 regions. When I say 4 regions, I'm talking about how we divided Zambia in 4 regions to train journalists in investigative journalism. We started with Kasama, then we came to Lusaka, then we had one in Kitwe, then Livingstone, and then finally we had one in Ichipata, eastern part of Zambia. The objectives of this training program was to equip journalists in skills on how they should carry out investigative pieces.
We conducted the training in such a manner that we sort of was very practical on how newsrooms during newsroom diary sessions should make investigative journalism a priority, meaning that they should, in their planning of news for the day, they should make investigative stories a priority more than the scheduled news. But also further to that, we explored the techniques of how to identify investigative pieces and how to go about investigating a story or an expose story, and how to go about cross-checking the facts, and how to go about to identify reliable sources, genuine sources for the stories, and also how to dig out information for stories from documents. Basically, our point was to ensure that the trainees understood that all stories are investigative in nature.
Some of the reasons why we do investigative reporting: one, obviously, the obvious ones. We want to keep the authorities in check, right? We want to give the government checks and balances, and we also want to have a good society that we can live in. We also want to avoid legal consequences, right? If you just pick whatever is being put there and then you go and publish without investigating, you can get in trouble. You can be sued. So what you want to do is to avoid that. You do an investigation so that when your story comes out, you have not made any assumptions.
This opportunity that has been given to us is to help us to be very specific in the way how we're supposed to pursue stories that seem to be very difficult. And investigative journalism is a very effective tool, like what we've been exposed to, how we can go about it. Now that we're living in the digital world, how we're supposed to use the same tools that everyone else is using it, however in a very different way, like what we've been exposed to.
I like the example that you gave of the post. It's no longer in existence, but one can actually go back and check some of the posts that were made by the Post newspaper.
One thing that stood out for me is twitter.com, where I do a lot of community stories. So take for instance, there's a lot of load shedding or water blues in Mutendere. I'm able to actually use that tool to actually find out what people are complaining about water. And not necessarily going on the ground, I can even get their views from just this tool.
By virtue of being one of the editors of our social media pages, I also get questions on every story that comes. When someone sees a story somewhere, they may not know whether it's fake or real, so they come to ask me. And sometimes I find myself in a situation where I don't even know. So some of these tools that we've done, we've learned about, they will help me to verify. Yeah.
The investigative journalism training under the Free Press Initiative has been very helpful in the execution of my duty as a journalist. The training has broadened my understanding of digital tools and how to use them in cross-checking and fact-checking of stories. Further topics that were covered under the training, such as how to find and tell impactful investigative stories and the legal framework to consider when carrying out investigative journalism, have been very, very useful.
So far, we have had good interactions with the journalists, and we are happy that most of them have found this particular training is very helpful. This investigative journalism training should go on to impart more knowledge to the journalists out there and ensure that our stories are in-depth for the benefit of the public.
The workshop came at the right time because it came as a capacity building and obviously to remind me of what I'm supposed to do in my daily work, because many are the times that we see stories as just mere stories, and obviously you get this source and the other source, you put pieces together and off you have a story. So the workshop came at the right time and that it has really helped me.
I remember in all the trainings that we undertook, there were assignments, group assignments. They were very highly practical, and they ended up into plenary discussions, finding solutions to some of the challenges, perfecting, and they're quite participatory in terms of the approach.
This program has exposed a number of journalists to the things that they are lacking. The program, I would say, was a very big success, but the number that we trained cannot be compared to the number that are still out there. We need to have this periodical training for these journalists. It was a very good program because most of them really appreciated that they were exposed to this kind of training. And you could see in their faces that they need more, and they need more of their friends to know this so that they can be speaking the same language.
It was a great opportunity for me to be involved on this project. My role was to work with the reporters that had been selected to pursue various ideas, investigative ideas, providing them guidance right from the start and working with them through the whole process of gathering information and putting their work together. For those reporters that we worked with on the project, I think they were able to produce some works that are outstanding. They were able to bring out issues that ordinarily we do not see in the media, which is very important. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for investigative reporting to really thrive in our country.
The work of journalists, investigative journalists, is quite important to expose some of the iniquities and also, the public mistrust. So investigative journalism is at the heart of exposing some of the activities like what I've mentioned. And with FPI, I got interested and got involved in one of the stories that I got support from them to do, and this was actually looking at the health sector, the drug supply system. We all know that with the past regime, there have been a lot of accusations of corruption in the procurement of medicine for hospitals and health equipment. So I got involved because, of course, at that point the figure was known, but we didn't know what was happening in the background. So by getting to look into that, I was able to expose some of the activities that were going on in the background. So that's an important story, I think, for both the people who are in government now to understand what was going on and to make corrective measures going forward and address the challenges that the health sector is facing. So I think to FPI and to others who may come on board to support this initiative, this is what this country needs for investigative journalism to move forward.
The FPI investigative reporting training is a good initiative. I participated in the very first one held in Kasama. Later, they assisted me with finances to carry out an investigative project that had been thinking about but didn't have resources. I undertook an undercover investigation to find out how prohibited immigrants, some coming from as far as Ethiopia, Eritrea, Pakistan, and several other countries, are smuggled into Zambia through Nakonde border. Thank you very much once again, FPI, for your assistance.
The fact-checking skills were very much needed because I discovered that most of the team had no formal training. And I found this in almost all the radio stations that I conducted mentorship with. And most of the people, especially in the Catholic-owned Radio Maria, were volunteers. And because these radio stations are not employing trained journalists, it's important to have programs like what the Free Press Initiative did, where you go out to them and train them at their own radio stations, because that also is part of training. In total, I went to 4 radio stations. I went to 3 FM and Radio Maria in Chipata, and then Kariba FM in Siabonga, and Radio Mpongwe in Mpongwe on the Copper Belt.
As FPI will come up with a number of other initiatives that can ensure that we assist the media industry in Zambia to have more than enough capacity to handle just about everything, because what we want is to have a very strong traditional media which plays a very key role in a democracy like ours. So that's the whole idea behind this project that we are running. Our hope is that we can cover as many journalists as possible with funding from the United States Embassy. That has made it possible for us to have this sort of training workshops.